I guess it really depends like how many rounds you're doing. And I recently just had it happen to me on the buy side. So I had a client, we're looking in Hamilton. We found like a house came up. The offers were that night. And I was like, he really liked it. I'm like, should we go? So I called a realtor. I said, hey, I know you're doing offers tonight. Do you have any interest on the place? And he said, yeah, we have a few people. And I said, okay, like this is my client's budget. Would that work? And he's like, yeah, we would take an offer like that. So I wrote up the offer. Mm-hmm. I sent it to him. He said, yeah, go see the house and it's yours. I said, are you sure? Because we're in Toronto and it's 8:00 on a Friday night. I don't want to drive out there if you're not going to take our offer. Are you sure? Do not waste my time. He's an investor. We'll get the next house. He said, yep, go ahead. We get out there. We see the place. I text the agent. Perfect. We love it. Let's get the deal done. Don't hear anything. So I'm driving back. No answer. He calls me, said, listen, he's like, I had another offer come on the table. We were the only ones. Apparently, a couple offers came on the table. There's a couple offers on the table. You're neck and neck. You're going to have to increase your price. I'm driving back being like, you already told us we were going to have the house. And he said, sorry, it is what it is. Okay. Call my client. He's a little upset, but I'm like, listen, we're close. We just have to up our price and it's ours. So we up the price. Again, 40 minutes goes by, no response. He's like, I'm so sorry that they raised their price. You're going to have to come up again.
Shit.
And so I called him. I said, listen, I don't want to be going back and forth. If we come up in price, is it a crazy amount or do we just have to come up a nickel? He said, you just have to come up a nickel. The place is yours. I said, are you sure? He said, yeah. We come up in price. 30 minutes goes by. Again.
Welcome. It's David Chinelli here with the DC Talks podcast. This is episode 41, and you have an absolute treat today. We have Jenna Rose, last name?
Ferguson.
Which is funny because we just call you Jenna Rose all the time, and we've even had a deal together. So a little bit of history. So Jenna is obviously a realtor, and Jenna and I had a deal 3 years ago.
I think so. Yeah, right around there.
Yeah, and that's how we kind of met. And this is the first time meeting in real life.
Yeah, it's so crazy though because I feel like we've already met.
Yeah, and we talk on Instagram. Yeah. We go back and forth, share some ideas. It's great. That's one thing I think people don't realize about our industry is that. Once you get along and have a good deal or like have a good interaction with somebody, we talk afterwards. And it's like, it builds relationships and that's kind of what you want. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So welcome. So again, you're episode 41. Welcome to the DC house. So share with us a little bit, like stories or like we're going to get into some stories of stuff about your life, how you got started. Mm-hmm. I guess people would just be interested, especially yourself. Like you have a really unique story of how you came to Toronto.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, a little background about me. I am from the East Coast and I originally left about 8 years ago, which I can't even believe. I moved to Calgary first in 2015, but as we were kind of talking about, the economy crashed. I was going out there to essentially, make a whole bunch of money. I wanted to save and open up a gym, bartend, but God had other plans. 2015 in Calgary, the economy tanked. I couldn't keep a job. I had to go on welfare. And I come from a very poor family background. So when I was going out there at 20, it was like, you're going out there on your own. If you get stuck, you get stuck. So after a year of grinding it out, really just struggling, my boss at the time lost his job and I was nannying and I'm like, oh my God, survival mode again just kind of kicked in. And I looked at jobs in Toronto, see if I could like model, do influencing. This is when Instagram really started to pick up. Yep. Got a job to Toronto, flew out here. I was walking down in City Place, Fort York, where I live now. I was looking around and I'm like, this is where I need to be. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to become successful in the city. Called my roommate at the time, about 4 hours being into Toronto. And I'm just like, I'm moving here. And then packed my stuff up, came here, no friends, no job, and just kind of figured it out.
Okay. What do you mean just figured it out? So first off, you go home, you pack up your stuff. Did you have a place to move here or when you?
So this is now I feel like a full circle moment. So when I was here for the 4 days in Toronto visiting from Calgary, I didn't have any intentions of moving here, but when I was walking in City Place, I just knew that this is the city. And so funny enough, you go on a couple Tinder dates. I was 20 years old. Give me a break. And I had one of my friends connect me with a realtor at the time. So he was showing me places. Mind you, I've never done this before. I have moved out. I have lived on my own since I was like 16. I've lived in plenty of apartments, but very different market in the East Coast in Calgary to Toronto. So we're going around. We're seeing all these places. I tell him my whole story, moving here, no job, yada, yada, yada. We find a place that I absolutely love, and he was like, okay, I need job letter, pay stubs, credit report. I'm like, oh my God, I don't have any of this. And so the other guy that I went on a Tinder date with, I was telling him this, and he's like, oh, I can get you fake documents, no problem. You just have to pay a few $1,000s. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. So I probably shouldn't say this, but I did get fake documents done, job letter, credit card. I didn't own a credit card at the time. Like I had nothing. And so I went back to Calgary. I got a different realtor. I had to get rid of this one because he knew I didn't have a job. So if I showed him a job letter, he would have been like, this doesn't make sense. And so I got a new realtor. I signed the documents for Dan Lucky Way. Mind you,
151 Dan Lucky, that one?
151 Dan Lucky Way. Yeah. And I, came, and then I flew back a month into it. I came back to Toronto. I'm sitting in the lobby. The realtor's like, where are you? I'm like, I'm in the lobby. Where are you? He's like, I'm in the lobby. I go to the concierge. I said, what building is this? He goes, 38 Dan Lucky Way. I'm like, oh my God, that's the unit I thought I was signing for.
Oh shit.
So I take my suitcases. I walk up the street like an idiot. I'm like, oh my God, Jenna, what condo did I just sign for? I get in, it was realtor hands me the keys, give him the money, he dips out. I go up into the condo. It was a shit box. Like the place I live in now is gorgeous. This place was like, there was some blood on the walls. The washer machine didn't work. There was a tiny little window. And I'm like, I can't have this extraordinary life in this condo. So called the realtor, threatened him. Didn't know what I was doing. I'm like, I didn't sign for this. Like, I didn't even see this place, yada, yada, yada. I got my half month deposit back. He didn't give me the whole thing. Found a new realtor. This was, I think, 2016 when the rental market was crazy. And so we're going around. We're looking. Not
as crazy as today, by the way.
Yeah, it was nuts. And just going around looking at all these places. I had 1 month to find a new place. I was losing condo after condo because it was couples that were going in or people that were making more money than me, even though I didn't have a job. It was fake documents. And then I had 2 days before I had to move out, and I was looking at women's shelters because I didn't have any extra money to stay. My family couldn't help me. I was sleeping on the floor on an air mattress in 151. Yeah, so then the realtor called me and a spot at 38 just opened up. It was the identical unit that we saw the next day. And then long story short, I got that place and I've been there ever since.
Oh, so you've been there ever since. Oh, that's pretty
I've been there for 7 years now because that was I'm not leaving.
So how did you afford to live there then? You got a job right away? When did you get your license? How did that work?
Yeah, so then when I moved in, there was a nutrition shop that just opened that was right beside me. And I kind of quickly realized that there was an opportunity, my background was personal training. I saw that there was an opportunity to train people in the condo gyms. So I pretty much hung out at the store all day. People would come in, I'd introduce myself, I'd hang out at the Starbucks, go to all the fancy places in downtown. And I literally just kind of sold myself to corporate women and men. And that's how I got started with personal training. So I did that for about 3 years, making 6 figures cash. Lived a pretty good life. And all of my clients at the time were, investors or had rental properties. And so we were constantly talking about the market, and personal training wasn't my passion. I just been doing it at a really young age. And then everyone was just telling me, you'd make a really good real estate agent with your hustle and this and that. And so I'm like, okay, let's do it. And then I got my real estate license. I quit that.
What year was that?
This was in the end of 2019.
Okay.
First of 2020. And I just told them, I was like, I'm not doing a plan B. I'm going all in with real estate. And I'm glad I did, because then 3 months later, the pandemic happened. And if I was still a personal training, I would have been screwed.
Yeah, you would have been done.
Yeah. So that's kind of the background story.
Yeah. And you've been with the same brokerage the whole time, or have you just switched around?
I was with Royal LePage for 3 months, and then I switched to Keller Williams. So I've been with them pretty much for almost 4 years now.
And they have a good training. Is that like, so what was important to you? Was it the training, or did you have a mentor there? Like, how did you decide on Keller Williams? And like, what are your thoughts on somebody starting in there too? For the path of what you chose, would you do the same thing? Yeah.
So I reached out to a bunch of realtors as I was getting my license. And then there was one guy in particular, his name is Nick, who's at my brokerage. And during the pandemic, we connected a lot over the phone, and I was just telling him my situation at Royal LePage. I joined with a team.
Which Royal LePage, by the way?
It was in Vaughan. No, it was in Vaughan. I can't really remember.
That's fine.
Yeah. But I joined.
That tells you something. If you can't remember your own brokerage's name,
yeah. So essentially, it was my wife's husband when I was training.
Your wife's husband?
Or my client.
Whoa, we just opened up a new can of worms here. All right, Jenna, I didn't know that about you.
My client's my wife's husband. My client's husband. Am I saying that right? Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Okay, so when I was trading, my client, her husband.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, just make that clear. And so he was in real estate, and he does really well for himself. And so she connected me, joined his team. But I just didn't really find any value. Like his coaching and training was just very old school to what I was kind of looking for. And there was a big age gap between us and just culturally different. So we just didn't vibe well, even though he's a fantastic realtor. And so then I connected with my friend Nick online. And then he was just, gave me a lot of really great advice. He pitched Keller Williams to me. And then I kind of joined the brokerage and kind of went from there.
So we were talking offline a little bit. One of the reasons why you didn't join a team, and why would would you do it differently now? So why didn't you join a team right off the beginning? Like, you did join a team for a small period of time, but then why did you backed away because of?
Yeah. So
what did you tell me?
Yeah, there was a couple of things. So one, I think it was at the time he was Nick was a pretty good mentor for me, and I was kind of thinking maybe doing a team down the road, but then I kind of wanted to build my own brand. And then when I started building my own brand, it was an ego thing. And I just didn't really want to, even though I really do see a value in a team. I think a team, you have a lot more resources. You can learn things quicker. Whereas on your own, you don't know what you don't know. And so at the time, I had him in my back pocket for everything. And, he was on the road of starting a team. I was thinking maybe I could work with him, but then I started, doing my own thing a little bit. And then it was just, I'm going to figure this out on my own.
Yeah. One thing I liked you said too, it's there's a successful realtor, but he did things old school. I don't think people realize it's there's no one way of doing real estate in this type of, any type of market, basically. You do what you find is more comfortable for you, what works for you. So what works for example, you might not work for me. And it's just figuring out what works for you. And I like the fact that you were smart enough to say, I've had people trying to do something that I do or something they're a little more old school. I'm then go with somebody who's a little more old school. Or if you want something cutting edge or something else too, maybe there's something even better than what we do, right? It all depends on what you're looking for. And I don't think there's one way to skin a cat, right?
Yeah, I really think you kind of just have to find what you're good at, try a bunch of different things. For me, I tried, all the type of lead gen and prospecting. And then my strong suits are, of course, social media, networking. I'm just starting to do now because I pretty much had my license all of pandemic. And I'm big into door knocking, cold calling. So I still do a lot of the, I do a lot of the old school stuff still, or now I should say, incorporating with social media.
Yeah. Which is great.
Yeah.
And support system, I'm assuming you have a boyfriend, right?
Yeah.
So he's very supportive. Does that help?
Yeah, he's super supportive. It's great because he also works in sales. And so he really understands where before I was in some pretty toxic relationships and they just wouldn't understand, the long days, or if I'm on the phone a lot, I can't be around, or, if I'm hanging out with my friends and I have to go in the coat closet for an hour to negotiate back and forth, they support it. They're like, well, Jenna's just in the closet, she's negotiating, which has happened, right? Whereas some people in my life just couldn't understand that. So he's super supportive.
Yeah. And I find one of the biggest thing for, I think, a lot of people is like your support system. It's like, so who do you rely on? Your friends, your family, whoever it is, you need to have a solid base. Otherwise you're like, this could be a lonely business. We've talked about this over and over again, and I was talking to one of our mortgage brokers, the same thing. He had a post the other day. He was just lonely, and it was just one of those things. He called other people, like, that's why this helps too. Like, we can bring people in. It's not always just ourselves and stuff too. And sometimes we're just bouncing ideas, but having that support system really, really helps.
And I think that's one thing too about the biggest difference with a solo agent and being on a team. I find when you're on a team, you're more included and you don't feel as lonely because you're doing more things. You're in the group chat, you're having the weekly calls, where a solo agent is just you and then your clients, right? So I definitely went through periods where I feel really lonely. I got an office at my brokerage just so I could be around people. But even still, for the most part, even being, having a space in my brokerage, nobody was there because it was COVID. So it's been this year where I'm starting to meet people. I'm starting to take clients out. I'm starting to go to networking events, and it makes it so much easier.
Yeah. So I started in 2015, 2016. I can't remember. And that's all it was. It's always about networking. Well, like, have your card on always, all the time, or digital cards and stuff too. And it's like, all that was my job. Like, my wife that night, we're like, okay, where are you going now? It's like, okay, I have this event. And that's how you do it. You network, you go to the gym, you meet people at the gym. And then all of a sudden the pandemic hit, and you're sitting there, me and my wife staring at each other, like, now what do I do? Well, the social media had started. We were already doing that. I'm like, okay, I went even further into that. It was, like, the pandemic, I think, just changed a lot of people's perspective of like how to do business in a sink or swim kind of situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. I can even see it. I've only been in real estate for 3.5 years, but I can even see the differences from, social media content with realtors when I first started to now. And it's interesting because when I first started, that was my approach, social media, networking on there. But in the beginning, my brokerage was, kind of looked down on it, being like, you got to do door knocking and cold calling. Social media isn't lead gen. It doesn't really make sense. And so I kind of stopped it for a while, and then I just knew that it was something I was good at. And then when I started doing it again consistently, I think within that first year, I made like $150,000 in commission just from social media clients. So it turned to be really good, and now everybody's doing it, and so it's funny. I smirk now. I'm like, oh yeah.
Well, I remember I had pitched. I was with the coach too, and his coaching style is like, you have 3 pillars. And I was looking at the pillars. I'm like, I don't like these pillars. Everyone has, like, the one pillar is always your center of influence and your the people that know you basically in your phone. So your past clients and center of influence, right? But somebody like yourself wouldn't have that, right? But I had that. I was like, okay. And then the other one was like, I guess I'll do open houses. But I'm like, but I want social media to be my second pillar. And they're like, well, we don't really do that. I'm like, well, I'm doing it. Yeah. And they kind of changed a little bit. So in the beginning, it's like, you don't need social media. But this, again, we started in 2016. It was like, I got a coach right away, which helped me. Right. It was like people weren't doing that. And I'm like, well, I will. And then they still, by the time I left them last year and stuff too, they still didn't really embrace it. It was more old school stuff too. But again, that's why it was my time to leave. Right. It was like, I wasn't progressing with the social media stuff.
So who were you with before?
Are we allowed to say the names?
Well, you can just say.
So I was with Rob Vivian. I like his coaching style. I liked as for new agents, because it's like basically he teaches you how to basically save money and stuff, and where you can save money on real estate and how to do things traditionally without having to break the bank. And a lot of it works, right? Like, I still use a lot of his system. I think it's consistent. Like, but when you wake up, what you do when you work out, and then your center of influence, how many times you call them, I still use a lot of that, right? As the basis. But then there's other coaches I like too. Like, we talked to, like, Ryan Stern. I went to a couple of his courses. Yeah. I liked, although his last course was like, I didn't find it was as beneficial, but I went through like 3 of his courses, and some of the stuff I've adopted too. And then I look, so Richard Robbins comes to our brokerage. We use a lot of his stuff. Then Tom Ferry comes to our brokerage too.
Let me know when he comes. So I'll come join. You
have to be a signature agent. So Tom Ferry, we really like Tom Ferry with our leaders group. So in our brokerage, what we have is we have different tiers. Like, so the leaders are like the top earners, and then there's the champions, and then there's like pretty much, then there's live feeds. They have everybody. So in our champions group, they bring in Tom Ferry, I think 3 times or 4 times, actually talks to our office. So it's like, it's our leaders group. So he does a Zoom, and it's just geared towards us. It's fantastic. So I'm not recruiting. I'm just saying, like, So one of the reasons why I loved our office, I'm saying, for young people coming in, like, the brokerage of which you choose really matters. And that's why I was laughing. You were saying Royal LePage. People don't understand. It's like, when you say Royal LePage, the Royal LePage is not just Royal LePage. It's not like a Sears, can I say Sears? Because it's not like a Home Depot or something. They're actually franchised. So they're owners of each business. So Royal LePage Signature is different than Royal LePage West or Royal LePage Integrity or whatever they call them, all those other ones.
Yeah. That's one nice thing about Keller Williams. Another reason why I did go there was because they're very big on training. Very, very big on training, especially when you're a new agent. You know, you get 2 free coaches in the first year. You're on a crap ton of calls and Zooms at the time. And they're really just there to hold your hand. Right. My broker, or who owns the brokerage, they have about like 5 or 6 locations. And if I have a question or anything like that, they're available for a phone call. Whereas when I left Royal LePage, they took $500 out of my paycheck.
For what?
For leaving. Oh, so it was just, that was like a big thing for me too. But I could be a little bit biased because I've been with them for so long, but they have really good training. And if you're a new agent, that's essential. Yeah.
And that's one thing I've not quote unquote recruited other agents to come to our office too. Cause I say like, listen, interview that guys. And so Royal LePage Signature is different, right? So I just like what their whole philosophy, what they provide. Yeah. And again, so one of the things I would say to new agents when you are looking to become an agent after you get your license, interview with a bunch of brokers to see. It's not always about the splits. Splits obviously matter, but what do you get for that, right? Like, what are you training? What are you doing to help me with my business? Because now, like, what people don't realize is that, like, when you become a realtor, you're an independent contractor. So your business is your name. Now it's your business. Yeah. So what's going to take your business to the next level? You want to partner yourself with somebody who's going to help you, as opposed to just drain your bank account. So I'm not mentioning any names. So there are a bunch of offices out there that they're just a number. They just like, sure, we'll have 7,000 agents in our office and they don't give you any training. We're like, oh, you only have to pay a small fee. I'm like, yeah, all you're doing is draining my bank account. That's all you're doing. Yeah. So one of the things, obviously there's a lot of things you've learned along the way. It's for a new person getting their license, right? So young female. Let's do that. So say you're what, 25 when you got your license, you said, or like how old are you?
25 when I got my license. Yeah.
So you have a 25-year-old young female coming up to you and say, okay, Jenna, what do I do? Is there anything what do I look up for? What's the industry like? How does it answer those questions? And how does are you finding it's difficult as a female at a young age coming into or how did you find it? Especially not knowing anybody in the city.
Yeah, I would say most definitely, whether it's a team or just a single person, find a mentor that genuinely cares about you and is going to help you grow for maybe nothing in return. You know, they genuinely just care about you. Some people, you know, will take you under their wing expecting, you know, for them to join a team or whatever it is. So find someone that you can trust that maybe you do want to work alongside, or find a realtor that you want to be like. If you find someone on social media, whatever that may be, and stick with them and learn as much as possible. Don't try to do it solely on your own because, like I said, you don't know what you don't know, and you're going to be learning a lot for years. I'm 3.5 years in. I'm still learning consistently. And so I think that's super important. And then, of course, you know, being a young female, you want to just make sure that you're in safe environments. So if you're going to open houses, you know, make sure you tell people where you're at, maybe have a little bit of protection on you. I feel like Canada, for the most part, is pretty safe. But there was a girl in my brokerage who, you know, something went wrong at an open house and, you know, things kind of went south. Really? Yeah. So just, you know, being alert and, you know, making sure you're safe. And another thing too, when you're posting on social media, before I used to do modeling and influencing and stuff. And so when I first got into real estate, I thought I could be a realtor and a sexy bikini model. You can't do that, right? Again, you don't want to attract the wrong people, and you just want to make sure that you're speaking to people who are serious and take you seriously. And so if you're on Instagram, you know, taking videos and showing yourself off, unfortunately, that's going to attract the wrong people and you can put yourself in pretty dangerous situations. I still have, you know, once in a while, like creepy people come into my life. And I feel like for the most part, I've really cleaned up my act. But as a young female, again, you just have to be super conscious of all of that stuff.
Yeah. Interesting. It's funny putting yourself in that position. Never thought like, as an industry, we're obviously opening up and telling people where you're at all the time, open house and everything. Like we had that one girl in, I guess it was in Florida. She got from an open house was killed. Remember, I don't know if you heard of that a few months ago. And we were kind of scared. So just like, I've been lucky enough not to have to worry about any of that kind of stuff, and hopefully that doesn't happen to me. But I do have to be cognizant of the girls that work with me as well. We have to be careful. We have one of our agents has a stalker, and we're like, she just won't do open houses. And I'm like, yeah, we get it. Like honestly, like because you never know. And it's like it's been an ongoing situation. And believe it or not, the police don't help a lot. No. And they're like, well, she doesn't physically threaten you. Like there's been social media posts and where she's showing them, she's like, she's actually threatened me. She's like, well, and they've been loosey goosey about it too. And like, yeah, they've arrested her a couple of times, but it's like, but it's not going anywhere. And and we push back. We're like, what's going to make you happy when I'm dead? So as much as the police are there to protect you, sometimes their hands are tied. So like, yeah, I would say protection is huge, no matter where you are, like especially a young female, anywhere in the city. It doesn't matter what city, even though Toronto's safe, you just never know. You
just have to be aware all the time. If you're getting messages from somebody and they want to talk about real estate over drinks, do some qualifying questions. Are you pre-approved? What's your budget? Yada, yada, yada. And if they don't have those answers, you can usually tell within the first few minutes if they're just trying to take you out for drinks to like flirt with you or do whatever, or if they're actually serious of buying. And getting a lot of people come through my social media, I can tell within the first few minutes who's serious and who's not. Right. And I'm not going to waste my time. And so I think you just have to be alert all the time.
Yeah. So what our teammates have done with me sometimes when they have questions like that, they'll say, sure, can you just talk to Dave and they'll give my email and you never hear from them.
Yeah,
again. I've
done that too with my colleague. Yeah, I'm like, okay, here, he's going to come with me on the appointment.
Yeah. So
and then all of a sudden they're not interested anymore. So.
Exactly. Yeah. That's always a good trick. Have a male companion with you too. I think that's fantastic. So it's like, that's obviously it's a great idea. So advice. So what was your inspiration besides so now moving forward, we know your inspiration in the beginning was to eat.
Yeah, very much so. Survival mode.
So now you're not surviving, you're doing well, you're thriving.
Yeah.
So what keeps you inspired to do, what do you see for Jenna in the next little while? Like, what do you want to do with this?
Well, I would say it's been I'm doing well now, but it's been a rocky road. I think the last few years, COVID, it was really hard to keep a straight mindset because you're locked in, you can't work out. So it was hard the first couple of years. You're just struggling, not even so much with work, but just keeping your mental state. But now recently, being in a healthy relationship, I feel like I have more of a purpose now of building something with somebody and, really just seeing what that future could look like together. So I think that's a really big motivating factor. Whereas before, you don't really have that. You're kind of just doing the day to day. So I think that's kind of what keeps me motivated and inspired.
Well, now you have another mouth to feed.
Yes. And now I have a little kitty that I have to take care for, and her food is not cheap.
No, we have 3 of them. That's why when I saw Jenna got a cat, I was all over you. I'm like, oh my God. And he or she, I'm like,
it's a she.
She's adorable. And she's growing so fast. Holy crap.
Yeah. I'm taking her out on walks. I'm training her. I want to take her hiking, see the world. She's going to be my child for the next while.
What's her name?
Nyla.
Nyla's adorable. Yeah. So if you guys haven't checked out Jenna on her Instagram, go check out her cat.
She has a TikTok too.
She does too? Oh my God. You got to send me that. Yeah. I'll follow Jenna.
It's just a lot to juggle though, but
I'll follow Jenna. I'll follow Nyla. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we talked before a little offline, and you do have a special story for our deal, which I don't even know the story yet. You haven't told me anything about this.
I'm so excited to tell you the story.
Okay, so what happened?
Okay, so when we did our deal a few years ago, that day I had a really rough day. I got into a fight with someone who was in my life at the time, and it just went so bad. So I'm sitting in my car, I'm bawling my eyes off, and then I get a ding, ding, ding. I look down, I see that I get a bully offer for the house that I was listing. I go,
was that mine?
It was my listing.
No, I'm saying, was it my bully offer? Because we talked beforehand.
No, it wasn't. Okay. It wasn't yours.
Okay.
And so this was my very first listing sale. So I had no idea what I was doing. I just saw the bully offer come through and I wiped my tears and said, okay, it's game time. Put that behind me. I got to focus on this. So then I called everyone who showed the house. And then I ended up getting 5 more offers, one of them being yours. Again, first listing, no idea what I was doing. And so I remember going back and forth being like, okay, I know I have to try to get these people up in prices. So I'm going to negotiate with everybody. Everybody came up in price. And then I went again and I went again and I went again, instead of properly being like, okay, we're going to have 2 more rounds of like negotiating, or we're going to have 1 more round, bring your best and final, whatever's on the table is on the table. I wasn't doing that. I was just talking to all of you guys, just telling me.
I still do that.
Well, for me, I was just like kind of just going back and forth with everybody and not being organized.
Yeah.
And so I think we were negotiating until like midnight.
I was falling asleep too. It was like, oh.
Yeah, and I was
having a scotch. I was like falling asleep. Like, oh shit, the phone's going off.
And then I had a realtor call me at like 10:30, being like, if I brought you 1.5, would you take it? And I said, yeah, of course. I don't hear from him for hours, so I'm going back and forth with like you and 4 other realtors at the time. So then yours was like top and final. You were like very close with another realtor. And I just remember having so much anxiety. And I'm like, okay, I sent it to my clients. They were happy with your deal. I was texting you, I'm like, okay, we're going to do the sign back, yada, yada, yada. And then the agent, the 1.5 agent, comes in last minute, sends me the offer on paper. I'm sitting here sweating. I'm just like, I'm not gonna see this offer. And so we ended up going with you, and I think we sold it for like 1.450.
Yeah.
And I had an offer for the house at 1.5, and I was just so anxious and so nervous. I'm like, I'm just gonna pretend that I didn't see that, because we were in the sign back already.
Right.
We were accepting your offer, right?
And I think you had told me at that point we've accepted too. So you kind of have to go with me.
So it was like the offer was accepted at this point, right? So it was like, what am I going to do? I can't just go back and say, just kidding. Everything was pretty much signed.
Or you can get sued for that.
Yeah. So it was just so stressful at that point, but it was my first listing sale. I had no idea what I was doing. And so funny enough, here we are. I'm a lot better now, guys.
Well, it's fine. There's certain things we noticed, like we noticed, I could tell it was your first listing, because it was kind of, and it just wasn't, I wasn't harping on it too. It was just like,
I think I might've mentioned it to you towards the end, being like, I'm a little newer.
Yeah. And I said to him, like, yeah, I can tell. And which is fine. Like, we have other guys saying, well, I've been in this industry for so long. I hope I wasn't a dick. Obviously, if I was a dick, you wouldn't be here today. Yeah,
for sure.
But it was one of those things I remember saying to my client, I'm like, okay, like, I can tell she hasn't done this for a while. And like, so we're going to go through. But there are certain things we noticed that, like, even I was walking through the home, it was like, so now you pay more attention to it. And the seller's telling us like, oh, but this, and like, oh, like Jenna didn't tell me that. And she's like, I'm like, that would have added value. And it was funny. It was kind of like, and I don't know if he told you stuff too, but he's telling us all the stuff behind the walls and stuff too. And it's like, it was interesting, right? Yeah. So it's like, now it's like, so I make sure it's like, okay, moving forward, I have them have a list. So I learn things from all the time from what we're learning from other sales. And I turned to my client, I said to him, like, and I think you told me about the 1.5 afterwards. I'm like, you realize you stole this, right? Like, for this price, like even at 1.5, I'm thinking if you would have waited, because this was a Friday. We were doing a lot of this on Friday, and that's because I remember I gave you a call, and I said one of the reasons why I know now what I would wait to do if you're going to get a bully offer, we usually wait till after the open house. So that's one thing I learned, because at the beginning we said we're open house, like open up to bullies, but I'm noticing after the open house is like, okay, my clients are already more willing. Okay, we showed it to more people at the open house. They feel more confident taking a bully offer. So that's why I try to listen a little later in the week and try to do the bully offer after that. So these are kinds of things I've learned too. So when I saw you were able to do it on Friday, I'm like, I turned to my client. I'm like, she's going to take a bully on Friday. This is perfect, because I'm like, no one's going to see the open house. And that's when the market was hot. So
and it was so hot.
And if you would have waited, I think if you would have waited, you would have got more.
Well, even just seeing that deal, like after we accepted everything, right? I wasn't, what could I have done? But it was such a crazy experience. Let's
be honest. You still got a lot of money for your client. Like, it wasn't like, we're not talking like, oh my God, they only, no, they got a lot of money. They got a lot of money.
And they were super happy at the end of the day.
Of course.
They were also very scary sellers. It was good cop, bad cop between husband and wife. And the whole time I was just, every time I would speak to them, I would like, shake and stuff like that. But I'm really happy that my first listing was so intense, because then after that, every listing's gotten easier. And then I've just learned so much. But again, that's how you learn in this industry. And I think a lot of realtors try to like act like we're perfect and we know it all. But when you're new, you're learning as you go. Right. And it's just one of those things, right?
I think I said this to Owen, one of our talks, I think before. So Owen's in the back, we were watching this, just making sure we're keeping on time. So I sold a property for a friend of ours too. And I remember so we sold our house in 2021, December, and we listed his property on June of this year. And he's like, Dave, I want you to do exactly the same thing you did at your house. And I said, no, you don't. And then I said a story, and he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, his name's Derek. I said, Derek, I've gone better. Like, it's been a year and a half. Like, everything's sharpened. Like, so every time I'm doing a listing, I'm getting a little bit better. Certain things change. It's like, we try things new out. So I'm like, no, so you don't want me from a year and a half ago. You want me as of today. And that's, I would say, even us, like, we're still, every time we're learning new stuff.
Every time. No deal is the same.
No.
There's always slight differences, and you just keep learning as you go.
Yeah. But to be honest with you, for your first deal, having those multiples in that crazy of a market, you did very well. The communication was great too.
Thank you. I appreciate it because I had one realtor threaten to sue me over it because they were so upset that we went with your deal, because I guess they were under the impression that I wasn't doing any more rounds. And so they were super like upset with me, and they were freaking out. And again, like, it was just so stressful. And I just told them, like, listen, like, I'm newer at this. I'm sorry if I, didn't do things correctly or yada, 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 but my clients are happy with this offer. And they were extremely angry. I'm like, well,
they had an opportunity. Learn. Well, that's the other thing is they had an opportunity to give their best and final.
Yeah.
And that's up to you. Like, and you can't say like, oh, well, here's an extra $5. Now they can go all night. The reason why I say I still do this, sometimes I'll have an offer situation. Like, some people say, okay, we'll give you the first round. If somebody's obviously clearly head and shoulders above everybody, no one's going to catch that. They say, okay, we'll just take it. I still go back and I say, listen, like, I tell people we have a good offer, but we're giving everybody an opportunity. Some people just fall off the wayside. It just happens.
Yeah.
But sometimes I went back and forth. Like, there's certain situations to say, this is your best and final. I get the offer back and they're off by $1,000.
Yeah.
So what do you do in that situation, right? So you go, is this your best and final? Because you guys were really close.
I guess it really depends, like, how many rounds you're doing. And I recently just had it happen to me on the buy side. So I had a client, we're looking in Hamilton. We found, like, a house came up. The offers were that night. And I was like, he really liked it. I'm like, should we go? So I called a realtor. I said, hey, I know you're doing offers tonight. Do you have any interest on the place? And he said, yeah, we have a few people. And I said, okay, like, this is my client's budget. Would that work? And he's like, yeah, we would take an offer like that. So I wrote up the offer. I sent it to him. He said, yeah, go see the house and it's yours. I said, are you sure? Because we're in Toronto and it's 8:00 on a Friday night. I don't want to drive out there if you're not going to take our offer. Are you sure? Do not waste my time. He's an investor. We'll get the next house. He said, yep, go ahead. We get out there. We see the place. I text the agent. Perfect. We love it. Let's get the deal done. Don't hear anything. So I'm driving back. No answer. He calls me, said, listen, he's like, I had another offer come on the table. We were the only ones. Apparently, a couple offers came on the table. There's a couple offers on the table. You're neck and neck. You're going to have to increase your price. I'm driving back being like, you already told us we were going to have the house. And he said, sorry, it is what it is. Okay. Call my client. He's a little upset, but I'm like, listen, we're close. We just have to up our price and it's ours. So we up the price. Again, 40 minutes goes by, no response. He's like, I'm so sorry. They raised their price. You're going to have to come up again.
Shit.
And so I called him. I said, listen, I don't want to be going back and forth. If we come up in price, is it a crazy amount or do we just have to come up a nickel? He said, you just have to come up a nickel. The place is yours. I said, are you sure? He said, yeah. We come up in price. 30 minutes goes by. Again, didn't hear anything from him and they accepted another offer. I was so furious because
Why wouldn't he call you?
I was under the impression the whole time that we were going to get this place. And then if we came up, but he was going back and forth with all of these realtors and he was also attached to the property. It was, he wasn't on title, but he was kind of like a side investor type of thing. And so, yeah, it was just one of those moments when I was sitting there thinking like, is this what I did the first time with my listing?
Oh,
yeah.
God. Well, as we get to, unfortunately, we have to wrap up.
Yeah.
So, I know Owen's looking at me. He's like, all right, let's get this thing going, right?
We can't talk all day.
I know. We can talk real estate all day. So just a little closing remarks again. So want to see so if you have any closing words to people, either realtors, people want to become a realtor, any suggestions besides being the females, or what would you do to get in? Would you become a realtor first of all? And then, so if you had the choice again, would you become a realtor again? And then if so, what advice would you give to new realtors?
I would say if I was to go back, I would still become a real estate agent. And my advice to other people would be, don't get into real estate because you like houses and you like working with people, because it's so much more than that. It's so much more than loving real estate. It's so much more than liking to work with people. Like, you're quitting your 9 to 5 to work 24/7 and to compete with 1 in every 4th person who is in real estate. So you really have to love entrepreneurship. You have to be disciplined. You have to be consistent, and you have to be able to take hard criticism, because we don't just open doors and show houses. There's a lot of nitty gritty that goes behind closed doors. There's a lot of crying in your car, and then there's a lot of jumping in your living room, right? So you just have to be prepared that it is really hard, and we're in a very competitive market. And if you're going to get into real estate, you have to go in full time and you have to be fully committed. And if you're not, there's going to be people like me that will take the business.
Love it. And if people don't already follow you, what's the best way for them to catch your videos, etc.?
They can follow me on Instagram at jenna.rose.realty.
That's nice. Do you have a TikTok too, or just your cat?
I do have a TikTok. It's Miss Real Estate Toronto. I'm not as active on there, but I have a couple of viral videos going on there. So
that's nice. No one wants to use my videos viral. They're just on TikTok, I only get a couple hundred. That's it. I don't know, for some
TikTok
reason.
is weird, man. It's a whole other animal, and yeah.
I know. I haven't cracked the code yet. All right, guys. So if you like what you heard, obviously would love for you to subscribe, share, follow along anywhere where you watch the DC pod, or actually anywhere you listen to podcasts. You just kind of follow. If you don't know where to get that, if you go to my Instagram, it's David Vicinelli_realtor, and we do have a link tree. Just click on the link tree, and it has either a podcast or the videos, the YouTubes. You can subscribe there, so it's nice and easy for you guys to get there. And again, thank you, Jenna, for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. See you guys soon. Okay, bye for now.